What's down, people, and welcome to the last episode of Ghetto Gospel, for a while anyway. So where we left off at. Last episode, we wrapped up Israel's last words to his sons. He had all kind of blessings for his favorite son Joseph, and then he said that his youngest son Benjamin had that dog in him and ain't play about getting his, day or night. The last thing he did was tell his sons to bury him in the same cave as his daddy Isaac and his granddaddy Abraham. And he reminded them that their family bought that field that the cave was in, specifically for them to use it to bury folks in. And now we caught up. So this week, we're gonna jump into chapter 50, the last chapter of Genesis, and the last episode of Ghetto Gospel, for a while anyway. Maybe I'll bring it back one day. Either way, this chapter pick up where chapter 49 left off. At the end of chapter 49, Israel went on to be with his ancestors. And so the first thing we see in chapter 50 is Joseph crying over his pops, which, I mean, depending on your childhood, I can see somebody crying over their pops. So Joseph told his servants that was doctors to embalm his pops, which, let's stop for a second and acknowledge the fact that this man had doctors on payroll. Not doctors. So the next thing it says is that they embalmed him and that it took 40 days to do it. Then they tell us that it took that long just because that's how long embalming took. And if you like me, you might read that and wonder why I'd even say that. I ain't gonna explain why, but I'm gonna pause right quick on that point because it's one last thing I want to teach y'all about the Bible before we wrap this series up. If you ever reading and you come across something that's weird or that don't make no sense, something that'll usually make it clearer is figuring out who doing the talking, who they talking to, and when they saying whatever it is that they saying. It don't work all the time, but it'll usually keep you from jumping to goofy conclusions based upon one weird line taken out of context. Cause that's what the who, when, where, and why is. That's the context. You can apply them same rules to the news and pretty much anything you read on the internet. So then verse 3 say that after they got done mourning for Israel, Joseph got permission from Pharaoh to leave and go bury his pops in the family tomb in Canaan, just like Israel made him promise to before he died. So when he went to bury him, it say that buku folks from Pharaoh's house, plus buku important folks from Egypt went with him, and that's in addition to all the blood relatives. The only folks who ain't go was their wives, children, and animals. And when all them important folks rolled up to Canaan, they rolled up deep with all kind of horses and chariots and whatnot, so much so that it say the whole funeral procession was impressive. And when they came to a stopping point, it say that they all started crying loud, and Joseph mourned for 7 days. Now anybody who done lost somebody that mean a lot to them will tell you that you never quite get done mourning them, but carving out a chunk of time to focus on just getting through the mourning process is probably way more healthy than the way we do it, where we bury folks one day, go stuff our face with food to numb the pain later on the same day, go home and try not to cry, and then go back to work on Monday. Anyway, when the local folks saw the Egyptians in this whole funeral situation, they was like, man, them Egyptians going through it. So they named that spot after them. And so Jacob/Israel's sons did what he told them to do. They carried him to the cave that their great-granddaddy Abraham had bought and buried him there. And after all that was done, Joseph went back to Egypt with all of his brothers and the folks that came out there to Canaan with him. So now, when Joseph's brothers thought about it and realized their pops was dead, they was like, if that boy Joseph got beef with us, he gonna let us have it for all the stuff we did to him. So they sent that boy a message like, said Joseph, before Pops died, he gave a command. He said to please forgive your brothers for all they sin and all that pain they caused you. Forgive these servants of the God of your father. Which sound crazy, right? They claiming he literally called them sinners and servants of God in the same sentence. But Joseph started crying when he got their message because he ain't even have hate in his heart like that. So when his brothers came and bowed down in front of him and said they'd be his slaves, he was like, what y'all boys tripping for? What, I look like God or something? Y'all had a cake baked for me, but God turned that thing around and made all of this happen. He made it so all of these folks to survive. So y'all ain't gotta be scared. I'm gonna take care of y'all and y'all kids. And that put their minds at ease. So the last thing it tell us is that Joseph and his people stayed there in Egypt, and Joseph lived to be 110. It say he lived to see his great-grandkids from both of his sons. And the next thing it says is that Joseph told his brothers, all right, y'all, I'm about to die, but God gonna come rescue y'all and get y'all up out of this land and take y'all to the land he promised our ancestors that he was gonna give them. And then he made his family promise that when God came to their rescue, they need to take his bones with them. And so Joseph died at 110, and they embalmed him and put him in a coffin in Egypt. So one last thing before I get up out of here. So you see it say that Joseph died at 110, which means that the family had been in Egypt for less time than that. Now, if you remember way back in episode 31, God told Abraham that his offspring was going to be immigrant aliens for 400 years and they was going to get treated bad, but God was going to come through and rescue them. Now don't let me lose you, I'm going somewhere with this. When you start reading the next book, it immediately start out talking about how they was getting treated bad and how they was being oppressed and whatnot, which make it seem like it happened right after Joseph died. But at the time when Joseph was talking all this rescue talk, they had been in Egypt for less than 100 years. And that ain't just my opinion. The first chapter of the next book essentially tell you that everybody that knew Joseph died off, and another king who ain't know nothing about him came to power. And that's what led to the whole abuse situation. So this man was talking about something that was like 300 years in the future. God might have showed it to him, or Abraham might have passed that story down through the generations. Either way, even though it took buku long to happen, God said it, he meant it, and it sure enough happened. And you can shout on that one. So that's it, for a while anyway. If you don't know Jesus, but you're trying to get to know him, go and click that first link in the description down there. I see y'all when I see y'all. And as always, peace. I love y'all, and I hope y'all people straight.